I want you to picture something. You're driving. You've been on the road for a while. The GPS hasn't flagged anything. The road looks fine, maybe even better than the last stretch. No warning signs, no flashing lights, you're making good time. And then, maybe an hour later, something feels off. A road sign, a town name you don't recognize, and you realize somewhere back there you took a wrong turn. You don't know exactly where, you don't know exactly when, but you've been heading in the wrong direction for a long time. That feeling, that specific uncomfortable realization, that's what this episode is about. Not the turn, but what comes after. Welcome to Iconoclast Insights. I'm André Daus, and this is the podcast for people who'd rather see clearly than feel comfortable. Today we're talking about wrong turns. Not the dramatic kind, not the decisions that blow up in your face immediately and hand you an obvious lesson. The other kind, the quiet kind, the kind that looks like the right decision when you make them, but keep looking reasonable long after they've stopped being true. We spend a lot of time and energy talking about mistakes, how to avoid them, how to recover from them, how to learn from them. There are frameworks, retrospectives, postmortems, books, all useful, all pointing at the wrong target. Because most of the damage I've observed in organizations, in strategies and in careers doesn't come from obvious mistakes. It comes from wrong turns. And those are a fundamentally different type of animal. Let me draw a line that I think matters. A mistake is usually visible in retrospect. Something didn't work and you can see why. You hired the wrong person, you launched too early, the product missed the market. It is uncomfortable, but it's legible. You can point to it and say, that was wrong. A wrong turn is different. A wrong turn is a decision, an assumption, or a behavioral pattern that gradually moves you away from your intended destination, often while still feeling like the right thing to do. Notice what's missing from that definition? It's the word obvious. Wrong turns are not obvious. They are gradual, they are quiet, they come dressed as discipline or rigor or commitment or even loyalty. The road still looks fine. You're still moving. You might even be making measurable progress. Just not toward where you actually wanted to go to. Back to the driving metaphor, because it earns its place here. When you take a wrong turn in a car, you don't feel it. There's no jolt, no alarm, no moment of friction. The road continues. The engine runs, you might even accelerate. And the further you go, the harder it becomes to admit. Not just that you're on the wrong road, but how long you have been on it. Because every kilometer you travel is another argument for why you should still be going on this direction. That's the structure of a wrong turn. And that's why it's fundamentally harder to deal with it than a mistake. This is what makes wrong turns genuinely difficult to catch. They almost always look like the responsible choice, the mature choice, yet even the professional choice. Adding process looks like rigor. Measuring more things look like discipline. Building more structure looks like investment. And planning more thoroughly looks like preparedness. Staying the course looks like resilience. Each of those decisions taken individually is defensible, reasonable, even admirable. And that's exactly the point. Wrong turns are seductive because they mimic virtue. They feel like you are doing the right thing. You are being thorough. You are being careful. You are protecting what you've built, and everyone around you sees the same road. So no one raises a flag, because it looks fine, because you're moving, because who seriously questions something that appears to be working? The answer is almost nobody. And that silence is how wrong turns compound. Here's also a social dimension that rarely gets acknowledged. Wrong turns are often collective. The team agreed, leadership aligned, the board approved, and once a direction has that kind of institutional momentum behind it, questioning it doesn't feel like healthy critical thinking. It feels like disloyalty, like you are the problem, not the direction, like you don't understand the full picture. That's the environment in which wrong turns don't just survive, they get reinforced. And there's one more layer. The further you travel in the wrong direction, the more the people around you have invested in being right about it. The project lead who championed the decision, the manager who staked their credibility on the strategy, the team that spent months executing it. They are not neutral observers. They have skin in the story. And the story says, this still makes sense. So, the signal that something is wrong gets weaker, not stronger over time. And that's the part that should actually concern you. Let me make this concrete, because this concept is easy to agree with in the abstract and very hard to recognize in your own situation. An organization starts measuring customer satisfaction through response times. Makes sense. Faster responses generally correlate with happier customers. So they optimize. They track it, build dashboards around it, reward it. Response times improve. The numbers look good. And slowly and quietly, the team stops solving problems and starts closing tickets. The metric becomes the goal, not the customer experience, not the root causes behind why customers are reaching out in the first place. The wrong turn wasn't measuring response times. The wrong turn was then optimizing the metric, replaced thinking about what it was supposed to represent. Here's another one. A team has coordination problems. Decisions are slow. Communication breaks down. So they add meetings. Monday planning, Wednesday sync, Friday review. Makes sense. Except the meetings eat into the time people need to do actual work, which creates more problems, which require more alignment, which justifies more meetings. 2 years later, calendars are full and nothing moves quickly. The wrong turn wasn't the first meeting. The wrong turn was then meetings became the default answer to every problem that was actually about unclear ownership. And this one, which I encounter constantly in organizations that have been around long enough to have history, a company makes a significant strategic commitment, a market, a platform, a direction. Evidence begins accumulating that it's not working. Not dramatically, just quietly, persistently. Numbers that should be higher, signals that don't add up. And instead of confronting the evidence directly, the organization starts protecting the decision. New data gets reframed. Doubts get managed rather than addressed. Energy flows into defending the choice rather than questioning it. Because questioning it would require admitting something uncomfortable about the past. What I want you to notice across all three of these is the same structure. The decision that caused the wrong turn was defensible. At the time, it made sense. The road looked fine. The problem wasn't the original choice. The problem was everything that came after. The failure to keep asking whether it still pointed in the right direction. The wrong turn itself is not the most expensive part. The most expensive part is what happens after you could have noticed and didn't, or did notice and chose the story over the signal. Because this is what happens around a wrong turn. A narrative forms. An explanation for why this still makes sense, why continuing is the right call, why the people raising questions simply don't understand the full context. The investment already made becomes the argument for more investment. The time already spent becomes the reason not to stop. The reputation already staked becomes something that needs defending rather than examining. We call this the sunk cost fallacy in decision theory, but that label is too clinical. It doesn't capture what it actually feels like from the inside. From the inside, it doesn't feel like a fallacy. It feels like commitment. It feels like resilience. Hell, it even feels like the kind of steady, serious behavior that distinguishes strong leaders from people who give up at the first sign of difficulty. And that's exactly why wrong turns are dangerous, not because the original decision was reckless, but because staying on the wrong road starts to feel like exactly what you are supposed to do. Exactly what a professional would do. Exactly what shows character. The road still looks fine. You are still moving. And everything about this situation is telling you to keep going. There's one formulation I keep coming back to with clients in my own work and now here. A wrong turn is not when you make a bad decision. A wrong turn is when you stop asking whether the decision still makes sense. That distinction matters more than it might look like. It moves the question away from the past, was that decision right, and into the present. Is this still right? Right now, with what we know today, with where we actually are, does this still point in the right direction? That question is uncomfortable. It costs something. It costs the story you've been telling yourself and everyone around you. It costs the consistency that feels like strength. It costs the certainty of commitment. And in most organizational cultures, it costs social capital. Because asking it implies that someone made the wrong call. And nobody wants to be the one who says that out loud. But here's the alternative. You keep moving. The road keeps looking fine, and somewhere further down the line, someone does the math and realizes how far you've traveled from where you actually wanted to go. The people and organizations that course correct aren't necessarily smarter. They are not fundamentally different. They are just more willing to keep asking the question. Not once, at the beginning, but continuously. Even when the answer might be inconvenient, even when the answer means something has to change. That capacity to question what you have already decided is rarer than any technical skill, and it's worth more than almost any process you could put around it. I'm not going to give you a 5-step model today. I don't think that's what this needs. Instead, I want to leave you with one question. Just one. As usual. Where in your work or strategy, your organization, are you still moving but not necessarily forward? Or, in other words, where have you stopped asking whether the direction still makes sense? Not because there's no reason to, but because asking would cost you something. You don't have to answer right now, but sit with it. Because the wrong turn you can already see is behind you. The one that costs you is the one you're still on. This has been Iconoclast Insights. I'm André Daus. If this made you think, it did its job. Until next time, question everything, especially the things nobody's questioning.